Thank you so much, Matt. First of all, it's nice to see a lot of old friends here. You know, look, I was raised on these issues by Jack Kemp, Bob Mundell, Judy Shelton. I see Ralph Banco and John Mullen in the front row here, Matt Kibbe, Judy. So I guess we're all getting the band back together is what's happening here. This is probably the best 25 pages on money I have read in a long, long time. I'm going to be tweeting and Facebooking this all day, all week long, encouraging people to read this. This encapsulates it all. And so I don't want to give a redundant speech. I'll just try and pick up where my betters, as Mike said, left off. Sound money is a necessary precondition for economic growth. It is something that only civil societies can function on if they want to remain civil societies. And so you cannot have a system of civil society of strong, organic, real, true economic growth without the soundness of your money system. Now, I would simply argue, as coming in as budget chair, our fiscal policy is on a collision course with our monetary policy. Take a look at what is happening now. No matter how many times the Federal Reserve and all of the folks representing it come here and pound on the podium, we are not going to monetize the debt, we are not monetizing the debt. Well, what on earth are they doing right now? The point is this: they would like to say that they're not monetizing the debt, that it's really the intentions behind the motion, the movement, the action that matters, not the action in and of itself. They intend to monetize, to buy treasuries for the purpose of lowering interest rates for economic growth, not to monetize the debt. So look at the intentions, don't look at the actions. What is happening here in government is a systematic replacement of the rule of law by the rule of man. Look all over the place. Look at our regulatory policy. Look at our fiscal policy. Look at crony capitalism. Look at our foreign policy. And of course, look at our monetary policy. The rule of law is being replaced with the rule of man. It started a long time ago. Humphrey Hawkins is a good place to point as a reference point. The Phillips curve and the doctrine that was in place and embodied in that law is another good reference point. So where are we? We are right now in an era and a generation where a lot of people are not familiar with the precepts of sound money. We came off this period we all call the Great Moderation, where we had fairly a non-inflationary environment. We had some sound economic growth. And so those of us who are in the X generation or the Y generation on, you know, I was born in 1970, so I'm not that old. I see a lot of young people here born in the 80s and the 90s. We didn't know what this stuff was. We weren't around during the stagflation days. We were in grade school when the Jimmy Carter stagflation. We were just little kids when Nixon pulled us off the gold standard. So we didn't go through these fights. We didn't understand these ideas. We better come up to speed as a society now. We better get back into understanding what sound money is, how it's a necessary precondition for economic growth. These are the things that we have to get involved in, because if we don't understand what's happening to our money, then we won't truly understand what is happening to our country. There is nothing more insidious that a government can do to its countrymen than to debase its currency. Yet this is in fact what is occurring. Now, the Federal Reserve believes they got this thing all figured out. They believe that they can think this stuff through better than millions of individuals acting in their own self-interest in the market can ever figure out. They believe, because of some of the new powers they've received, paying interest on reserves and other exit strategies, that they can mop all this up just in time. They think they can put the cruise missile through the goalposts, meaning they believe they can turn all of this stuff on, deploy all of this money, run the printing presses over time, and mop it up just in time to prevent inflation from getting out of control. It's a fatal conceit. I see we have a great quote on the back here from the author of those phrases, Friedrich Hayek. All those who wish to stop the drift toward increasing government control should concentrate their efforts on monetary policy. We couldn't have said it better ourselves. That's why we keep repeating this. Here is the basic point. They believe that they can figure all of this out, rig the economy, kind of fool us into growth, which is inorganic, and then pull it out just in time. That we can mop up all this money supply. And what are we looking at to measure inflation? We're driving down the highway, looking in the rearview mirror. The problem is with this kind of driving, looking at the output gap model, which is a lagging indicator, looking at core inflation, which is historically always been upward revised, not looking at the dollar, not looking at the yield curve, not looking at gold and other commodities, we miss it. That means when you're driving down the highway looking in the rearview mirror, you've already passed your off-ramp and you've missed your turn. And so what are we doing right now? We are driving the car with 2 feet on, one on the brake, one on the gas pedal. It's a very bumpy ride. We are undermining the precepts of sound money, which is the necessary precondition for economic growth. There are no shortcuts, no sugar highs that will get us toward the foundations of a pro-growth society. Low tax rates that are predictable and fair. Regulations that are transparent, fair, equal to everyone, based on sound science. The rule of law on contracts and everything else, getting rid of crony capitalism. Getting spending under control and getting this debt taken care of. And of course, first and foremost is sound money. These are the basic foundations of economic growth that are so necessary and so important. So what is it we're going to do? Those of us from our corners of the Capitol are going to be advancing this conversation. And Judy has done a phenomenal job of getting this into the hands of Americans so they can understand what's at stake up here. I will be reintroducing a bill that I've been in Congress for 12 years now. It's kind of strange to admit that. And ever since then, Connie Mack and I, who was a senator from Florida at the time, had introduced this bill. Getting Humphrey Hawkins amended and changed once and for all to focus the Fed on its primary mission, which is money, price stability, the soundness of our dollar, not on all of these other things. Because oftentimes with this dual mandate, what we have here is the Fed running all over the place, embracing doctrines that are necessarily in conflict with one another. So number one, let's get the Fed, like Mike Pence said, back on its primary and singular mission, sound money. It's the only arm of our government in charge of our currency. All these other arms of government are in charge of employment policy, fiscal policy, economic policy. The Fed is the sole guarantor of our money, the soundness of it, and the value of our dollar. That's what they should singularly focus on, and that's what we want to get this law back to get the Fed back to a rule where they are actually pursuing the policies of sound money, and that they are showing the marketplace how they're doing it, where they're going, so we can take a lot of the guessing game out of it, so that we can stabilize investment horizons, so that people have faith that they can save, they can take risks, they can invest. As Junie said, it's all about restoring the value of the dollar. It's all about restoring it as a reliable standard of unit of measurement of value. We are the world's reserve currency for now, and we will not become the world's reserve currency in the future if we abrogate this responsibility, if we try to gain the system on the cheap, if we try to goose things in the short run to get a short-term stimulus at the expense of medium and long-term growth. So these are the things that are going to affect our future. These are the things that are going to affect our living standards. And the sooner we can reclaim those founding principles that made America so unique and so exceptional, the better off we're all going to be. All of these issues sort of come in confluence with one another. And I'll simply conclude with what I began with, because I want to get us back on schedule. Do we want to reapply the rule of law so that each and every one of us has our own right, our own opportunity to make the most of our lives, so that we are not picking winners and losers in government, so that we're not gaming the system for the few, for the special interests, for the people who can rig the system through their connections? Do we want to get us back to our system that is as good as gold, a system that is reliable, a system that treats every single one of us the same, and a system that says no matter who you are, you can be what you want to be if you just take on your own effort, if you just work hard? We don't want the government setting the rules and rigging it for some against others. We want the rule of law reestablished, because a society built upon the firm foundation that our founders fought for, that our veterans fought for, the rule of law, is a society that can grow and prosper. It's a society where America can lead in the 21st century just like it did in the 20th century, so that we can push the bounds of opportunism, so we can push the boundaries of economic growth and prosperity. That's the society we want, and we are at last coming at a tipping point in this country. And this tipping point comes to us in just a couple of forms. It comes to us in an economic form, one where our debt gets us, where it puts us in a tailspin spiral, where we lose our standard of living, where we are managing our decline, economically speaking. And another is a tipping point where we take individuals in society and we take away their chance of making more of their lives. We don't want a society of a majority of takers versus makers. We don't want a society where we transform our safety net into a hammock that lulls people into lives of complacency and dependency on the government, who think nothing but of consumption and where they get that from versus taking risks, planning, investing, working, being an entrepreneur. These are the tipping points we're reaching in this society, and the sooner we acknowledge this, the sooner and the better off we're going to be. So I would simply say, sound money is an issue that has to come back into our lexicon. It's something that people who have enjoyed the last few decade or years cannot take for granted anymore. And it's something that we've got to get our money system back on path. If we do, and I believe we have time, America's best century will be this century, not the past century. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. Next up is my